Welcome to AI for You. Today's prompt will help you create a synthetic data set that you can use as an example within a tool while you're doing training, or if you don't want to use a data set with personal data or proprietary information. You basically just tell the LLM what column headers you want, how many rows to generate, and what format to put it in, and it can create the data set for you. The full prompt is in the show notes. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Andrew Maynard. I've been listening to and reading Andrew's content for the past year or two, and I highly recommend doing the same. Today, we'll be diving deep into the future of higher education. Let's jump right in. Well, hello, Andrew. Thank you very much for joining us on our show today.
This is my pleasure. I'm really looking forward to this.
So, I'm going to start off with kind of a softball question, especially for you because you spend so much time in this space. How do you think AI is going to impact higher education institutions? And then what can leaders, marketers, and teams do to start prepare for this?
Oh, lovely, lovely softball. So this changes almost every day. I've just come out of a meeting where I gave a talk, and I started off by telling the people there, if you thought that you were one of the leading experts in AI a week ago and haven't learned anything new, you are behind the times. And it feels very much like that at the moment. So in terms of higher education, I think there are multiple levels here. Of course, many institutions are, I think, are behind the curve. You've got individuals who are really ahead of the curve, but institutions are still beginning to grapple with the very basics of large language models and AI. But at the other end of the spectrum, at the area where I work, I am now getting seriously worried about the core of what higher education institutions do, not only with education, but with research. We're now getting to the point where AI is taking on much of the intellectual and scholarship tasks that we pride ourselves in. And so now I'm beginning to worry whether there'll actually be a place for universities 2 or 3 years from now, apart from sort of a term that I've just started using, artisanal intellectuals, people who sort of use their intellect in a way that actually doesn't have any real world impact. It's just that they indulge themselves with their thinking, because AI is going to do far more thinking far faster than them.
Yeah, I mean, you've been playing around and you've been talking a little bit about some of the O1 Pro models and some of the capabilities in those models. And I think we're going to see fairly quickly a lot of the routine work that we're doing getting replaced and going away, which I think initially seems like a great thing. But I think that's just the beginning of where we're going to see our jobs going.
I think it is. And to me, the really important thing is to work out how we sort of create a future which is a future of coexistence with emerging AI. We could, if we don't think about this, so easily suddenly discover that we've done ourselves out of a job, even our own identity. But the true power here is thinking about what is deeply transformative, and how do we rethink our role as humans, as researchers, as scholars, as teachers in this field. And when you begin to do that, you can see incredible ways in which AI can either catalyze what we do or act as an accelerant, basically sort of set us on fire in terms of the ability we have to have a positive impact.
So, being in higher ed institutions and seeing the mechanics and the behind the scenes work, I work in central marketing, do a
Mhm.
lot of work with our admissions team, and we're planning 3 or 4 years out on these, campaigns that we're working on.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of thought or consideration or integration when it comes to AI within those conversations.
Yeah.
What can institutions start doing now that will start kind of acknowledging the fact that all these plans we're making are probably going to change?
Yeah. So this is going to sound really trite, but I think probably the most important things at the moment are to play and to learn through playing, and being inspired by new ideas through playing. An analogy that I use a lot, and actually comes from one of the MIT Media Lab units, is think in terms of playgrounds rather than playpens. I think too many institutions at the moment are thinking about AI in a playpen. You put people in the playpen so that they can learn about it, but in a very constrained environment. As you put them in there, you know exactly what you want them to do. But if you're doing that, you're missing the big picture. Whereas a playground is all about individuals exploring for themselves, learning for themselves, being innovative, being creative, finding new ways of doing things. And so, just from that perspective, I think giving people the opportunity to play, don't constrain them, give them the license, the permission, and the tools just to find out what AI can do in any context whatsoever, and then help them begin to think about how it changes the jobs that they do and the tasks they have in front of them. That I think is where true innovation will start emerging, and where I have no idea how this will affect everything from sort of marketing and recruitment to sort of management. That is where the seeds of really creative, innovative ideas will come from, a bottom up approach, if you like.
Yeah, and I'm always telling people that this is not a technology integration project. This is a change management project.
Very much so. Yep.
And I think so many people get stuck on, how can we become more efficient? How can we save time? And I think we really need to look at how can we change the way we
Yep.
work.
I agree. I agree. Yes. Yep. And it's exciting if you empower people to have those explorations and be able to flex their imagination and actually reward them for coming up with new stuff. It's the sort of workplace that I would want to be in.
Absolutely. Well, and so you are at Arizona State, and there are all sorts of very incredible, things going on there around AI, and everyone's kind of paying attention to what's going on. What are some of the most, I don't know, innovative, creative things that you've seen while you've been there?
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting question. So, the first thing I would say is, yeah, ASU, we have this reputation of being at the cutting edge, and in many ways we are. That we do things differently here, but I would say that other institutions are catching up, and in some places moving past us. And so we were an early adopter in terms of thinking about AI, especially in learning and education. And I think this is important. If you go back a couple of years when everybody was pulling their hair out, running around like headless chickens, saying sort of the sky's falling in because now students can cheat using AI. What are we going to do? ASU was one of the first institutions that said, we're thinking about this wrong. We should be thinking about it in terms of how it opens up possibilities and empowers educators and students in ways that we haven't thought of before. And that's been a really exciting journey here. The institution has developed a series of tools that have allowed educators to do everything from develop their syllabi, develop tests and rubrics, and a bunch of things like that. They're actually fairly basic things, but they've still been transformational. But we're also still exploring how we understand this space. So, for instance, we've allowed a number of people to start experimenting with ChatGPT just to see what they can do with it. It's one of those places where other institutions are already beginning to do this. But it's interesting to see how both the conversation is being changed around education and how things are slowly changing in the classroom as well. The other thing I would add here, going outside education, there have been some really interesting conversations around research and fundamentally, how do you accelerate research and discovery using AI tools? And here, I think, like other institutions, we're doing everything from building our own capacity internally so we can use these tools internally to really exploring how the latest foundational models push forward what we can achieve through research that we just couldn't achieve with humans alone.
What do you think are some of the biggest challenges? Because you see so many institutions that just aren't starting to integrate AI either into their classrooms or into their processes and workflows. What advice do you have for those institutions, and what do you think the main barriers are for them?
Yeah. Institutional inertia, obviously. At the individual level, I think it's incredibly hard if you're a professional in a university, an institution like this, suddenly being told that you have to come up to speed with some totally different tool, a different way of thinking, a different way of doing things. So there is that individual inertia as well, where people think they're too busy, they're too old, they're too staid, they're too settled to think about this. And I see that a lot with my colleagues. The huge danger here, though, of course, is that things are going so fast that if you carry on thinking like that just for a matter of months more, you're going to be out of the game. The way that you approach everything is going to be irrelevant. And so I think there's a real need to help people understand how the world is changing and how they can be part of it. And you don't do that just by telling people that it's changing or holding a town hall meeting and telling them all to change what they do. You've got to meet people where they are. You've got to give them a pathway which actually makes sense to them. So that's, to me, one of the biggest challenges and biggest opportunities in institutions. How do you give your faculty, your staff, even your students a pathway forward where it's easier for them to follow the pathway and learn and adapt than to resist?
Yeah, that's an interesting challenge, and I haven't seen too many institutions that are
No.
doing that, and it's always surprises me because, as institutes of knowledge, of, higher learning, you think that would be our, our
Right.
sweet spot.
You would have thought so. Apparently not, though.
And so, I wonder what it's going to take. Do you think there's going to be some global AI event? Do you think there's going to be a handful of institutions that, lean into this and suddenly start passing everyone else? Do you think it's going to come from the private sector or, individual brands and companies where we're all going to
Yeah.
start noticing the difference?
I think a mixture of everything. So the first thing is, I think again, if you're looking at institutes of higher education, there's an amount of inertia there. So even after we've become irrelevant, we're still going to trundle along simply because there is this sort of almost societal memory where people think this is the way you do things. But I don't know, worst possible case, you're going to have zombified universities that still exist, but they actually don't play any positive role. And I think sort of part of this is going to be other organizations and other tools are going to sort of fill the gap. So if you just think about sort of learning and education, yes, you can make a very strong argument that people need to come to the centers of intelligence, the centers of knowledge and insight in order to sort of learn in that holy place, if you like, and then take the knowledge out. But when people can find that knowledge anywhere else, why would they come to those centers? And I think if institutions don't adapt, that's what we're going to see more and more. We're going to find private companies developing the tools, giving the access to knowledge and learning. We're going to even find individuals. I mean, we've already seen this in society. Actually, good example, Khan Academy. And I know they become more institutionalized, but it was a game changer in terms of where people went to learn. And I think we're just going to see that accelerate. Institutions like universities are going to have to think fairly critically. What is the value add that they bring in a world where many people don't think that they need them anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. And when knowledge transfer is no longer enough to, bring students in, one of the things I always think about is the fact that, this shift in technology, this new like intellect on demand, it's going to create huge impact on our economies, on our jobs, on
Yeah,
the way that we function as a society. And it seems like higher ed institutions are great centers of thought where we could be having these discussions and
yeah,
be trying to come up with, solutions or options
yeah,
around this. But
yeah.
that doesn't really seem to be happening.
No, but but it could. So this is a very personal perspective and something of a hobby horse for me. But I have this deep belief that public universities in particular, I would say any institution of higher education and learning and knowledge creation has a societal obligation, but especially public universities we have an obligation to be leaders in society, to be generators of thought thinking and insights and understanding which serve the public good. And we have an obligation to ensure that there are conduits between us and society so that that understanding is maximized. And part of this is being leaders in thinking about how society adapts in positive ways to the emerging age of artificial intelligence, all the way from what the role of a university is in terms of learning and education and research and how that adapts, to maybe how society benefits in other ways from access to knowledge and intelligence. And interestingly, one of the ways of framing this is again, not mine, it's a good colleague's, is this idea of we're heading towards a future where intelligence is free. You no longer have to pay huge tuition fees to get intelligence or be part of an elite institution. Everybody can have incredible intelligence on the phone in their pocket. So, in that world, what is the role of people who are pushing the edges of knowledge and understanding and thinking in a way which benefits society? Sort of what is their role within AI? Where do they reside? How do they have that impact? I think all of these questions are up in the air at the moment.
For sure, absolutely. You've had a lot of conversations and discussions that I've found fascinating about different science fiction movies and
Yep.
shows and how the crossover between reality and those shows. And many of those portray a very, dystopian future, which of course AI is training itself on. So it may
Right.
think
Yes.
that that's what we're looking for. Do you have a show that you would like us to be moving towards?
Oh, moving. Oh goodness me, moving towards. Yeah, I. That's difficult because, as you say, there are so many that are sanitary warnings that we don't want to move toward. So there are two or three. A year or so ago, I actually wrote an article on 5 movies about robots that'll make you cry. And I did it just to show that there are some movies out there about AI and sort of sentient robots that actually are positive, and that they make you think about what is at the core of our humanity and how could that humanity thrive and be expanded in the face of AI. One of those is Steven Spielberg's film AI Artificial Intelligence, which is it's a heartbreaking film, but at the end of the day, it captures the idea that true humanity doesn't require a physical human body. There is something there in terms of what makes us us that transcends our biology, and that's actually quite exciting when we think about the long-term future of AI. But there are many others where you actually see a really close, very touching relationship between people and machines, which is positive. And as I was thinking about this, I was actually thinking about the movie She, which is not in this category, but it raises questions. But it starts off feeling as if it's in that category of a close symbiotic relationship between humans and artificial intelligence.
So, looking ahead, where do you see AI going in the next few years, and how long do you think it's going to take before we start to see a larger societal impact on the way that we function day to day?
Impossible to tell because things are going so fast. But despite that, I'm going to try my best. So people have talked about the jagged edge of AI, and I think that's what we're going to see. Except it's going to be more like mountains and chasms, and by that I mean there are going to be some things we do in society and parts of society that feel as if they're the same as they've been for the last 20 or 30 years, not much impact. But then we're going to turn a corner and we're going to find things that have fundamentally changed in ways we just couldn't anticipate. And that may happen as close as 2 or 3 years from now. The rate at which we're going, I think we're potentially going to see things like how supply chains are operated, how we actually get the stuff that we depend on being more and more mediated by AI. We're going to find a shift in society where if you're not asking your personal AI sort of how to do things, how to make decisions, how to learn about stuff, or even sort of just chatting about things, you're going to find yourself in a minority. We're looking at a future where increasingly we have the possibility of governance decisions being made either augmented by AI or outsourced to AI, which is both frightening but also intriguing if you think how dysfunctional human driven government is. And then on the research front, I think you're going to see a revolution in research. I wouldn't be surprised if 3 to 5 years from now, you are finding automated labs, say, take a chemistry lab or take a biomedical lab where they're looking to discover new drugs. It is automated all the way through from the initial ideas and literature searches to the design of experiments to actually physically doing the experiments with machines in the lab to analyzing the results and writing them up. I don't think that that's implausible.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a very interesting time to be alive.
Yep.
One of the questions that I always finish these interviews with is, right now, what are some of the ways that AI is helping you the most with your job?
Right. Oh goodness me. I'm trying to resist, and it is so hard. So one of the things that I hold precious is my writing and my thinking. They're an extension of myself, and I do not want AI doing my writing and thinking for me. But it's getting harder and harder to resist. So the temptation gets closer to just sort of ask ChatGPT to sort of write my stuff, and I've sort of veered that way a little bit, but very intentionally. But I would say that the thing that is blowing me away at the moment, and this is very recent, it's with the latest release of OpenAI's Deep Research AI tool. I find myself in meetings where we're discussing topics where people around the table know quite a bit about, but I'm feeling as if there's something missing. So as we're having the discussion, I'll just type in the question. into deep research. And within sort of 5-10 minutes, I've got the most detailed research analyst response possible. It's the sort of thing that you pay a lot of money to someone like McKinsey to spend 3 months on, and it's happening in real time. And I'm finding that is a game changer. It's also making me slightly worried because it makes me think that all of these committees that I'm part of, the reports we publish, I'm thinking this is really only scratching the surface compared to what I've already seen that AI can do.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular. And watching the model reason through the research
Right. Yes.
is it really gives you an insight into what's going on behind the scenes, which, like you said, is
It
terrifying and
It
inspiring.
does. And actually, just if I can say one quick thing on that, I have so many colleagues, and this comes back to the inertia, will say without any evidence, AI is just a stochastic parrot. It just makes things up. It can't actually do research like humans do. Then you watch this process and you'll see the AI go out and check a paper and say to itself, well, that's interesting. I'm not sure that's true. Let me find another paper. And it'll snowball out. And as it snowballs out and reads other papers, it'll adjust its thinking exactly like a human researcher would do.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking and fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for all the content that you put out. If people want to follow you or converse with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So two ways. Apart from emailing me, I'm pretty easy to find. Myself, my colleague Sean Leahy have a weekly podcast, Modem Futura, which I would strongly recommend listening to. It's a way of hanging out with us and sort of being a fly on the wall for some really fascinating conversations. And then I write regularly on the Substack, The Future of Being Human.
And I can't promote either of those enough. I always
Thank you.
find your content very inspiring. So thank you very much for your time today.
This has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Andrew's insights about the need to move from playpens to playgrounds in our approach to AI adoption is a powerful framework for institutional change. His warning about the pace of AI advancement and the risk of becoming artisanal intellectuals should serve as a wake-up call for higher education leaders. The emphasis on creating pathways that make it easier for people to adapt than to resist resonates strongly with the challenges many institutions face. As we navigate this transformation, it's clear that success isn't just about implementing new tools. It's about fundamentally rethinking how we approach learning, research, and knowledge creation in an AI-enabled world. Please reach out to me with unique ways that you're integrating AI into your professional and personal lives. And as always, blue skies and keep creating.